Right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jennifer Cummings, and I am a professional learning specialist with Khan Academy. I am part of the team who supports Oklahoma public school districts. It is my pleasure today to moderate a conversation around closing math gaps with AI. I would love to give a special thank you today to the panel of public school educators from Enid. You will get to know them very well as their role during today's session. But here is an at a glance view of our panelists today. As a nonprofit, Khan Academy, we measure our success as an organization based on the impact that we make on student learning. Everything we do is held to this particular standard. And if it won't have an equitable and positive impact on students or the educators guiding their learning, then it's just not for Khan Academy. And through this innovative approach, we work to support districts with fostering deep learning experiences. And then by recognizing this perspective, it reflects our forward thinking mindset, recognizing the potential of technology to complement traditional teaching methods and ultimately improve student engagement and understanding. And now, ladies and gentlemen, on to our panel of educators. So, good afternoon. We will be rolling through asking each one of them some questions. And please make sure if you have questions, the chat is open and available. Drop those questions in as well as the Q&A part on your Zoom. Dr. Crowley, we are going to start with you. Please let us know what was going on about a year ago and what did you decide needed to change?
So about a year ago, we were business as usual, and then we got invited by OSU, or Oklahoma State University, to join the Oklahoma State University, Khan Academy, and the Brock Foundation in a pilot opportunity to incorporate khanmigo into in our school, into either a department or a grade level, to help provide an opportunity to fill some gaps. So in learning about what that looks like in a little bit more details, and learning about some great funding opportunities and support, especially from the Brock Family Foundation, we were able to decide that we were going to focus our efforts for here in Enid Public Schools, went to secondary, specifically in high school, into our geometry. And so we, after that decision was made, I immediately went to our high school team. I went to our leadership team there at the high school with Mr. Molinax, the assistant principal over math department, and Miss Garris, the department chair at the math department, and started just picking their brains. How can we incorporate this? What is this going to look like? What would be the best way to roll this out into making it a successful implementation? Because that was the bottom line. We really wanted to make sure that what we were going to do was going to be beneficial in a way that was going to support the students and the teachers. And so we decided to, like I said, stick with geometry. And then we started working with the Khan Academy team, and we came up with a plan to focus first semester on getting our teachers familiar with the platform and the program, and letting them just learn what AI was, because AI was very new to all of us in the sense of what it could look like as an academic or an instructional tool. We all had experiences with kind of what AI looked like in terms of more like a chat GTP format, in terms of students could plug in a question, a response, and get an automatic generated answer. And so we were academically trying to, work through what does that look like in terms of how that is incorporated in a setting, in an instructional setting. And so we needed to learn how that looked in the way that khanmigo, the way that we're used to now working with khanmigo. But we needed to learn that first from our perspective as educators. And so we took time that first semester to get to do that. And then we planned to incorporate our students that second semester, bringing them in learning their skills and practices. And so now we've been doing this. This is our second year, and we have now expanded. Not only do we include our geometry teachers and students, but now we have incorporated our Algebra 1 and our physical science departments and students as well. So that's
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Crowley, for that well thought out and intentional plan in order to support both your teachers and your students in the process of adopting Khan Academy and khanmigo. I'm going to switch over to Mr. Molinax and Mr. Elders, the instructional coach. My question is for both of you. What would you say were the biggest roadblocks to student success in math? And how do you think that this approach has helped overcome those roadblocks? And we can start with Mr. Molinax first, and then Mr. Elders, we can go to you.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you for having us here on this webinar. Let me say this. We, as a team, with Dr. Crowley's help and with Mrs. Garrison and the rest of us, we didn't want to look at this as another program. We didn't want to view it like that. We didn't want to treat it like that. And we knew that there would be roadblocks. There would be roadblocks along the way. So we decided to slow play this out first, let our teachers learn the program. I call it program, but learn this material first and hypothetically put roadblocks what the kids may have. So when we started it, we already addressed a lot of the roadblocks, a lot of the bumpiness, a lot of the expectations, and our teachers pretty much knew the material by the time we started. So we were worried about even the kids saying, oh, it's another program. Oh, it's another AI. Oh, I mean, I can't use Chat GP on my phone anymore and all that good stuff. But because of our teachers and their dedication in the geometry department, studied it underneath Dr. Crowley, Mrs. Garrison, Mr. Elders, and I, they knew what we were going into, what we had. And I really believe that blocked a lot of it lowered a lot of the roadblocks along the way for students.
Great, thank you. Tyler, what would you like to add to what Mr. Molinax has provided?
Well, I'd like to give everybody a little bit of background about our community here in Enid. So we actually have a little bit more of a transient community whenever it comes to our student population than maybe the average across our country. And one of those reasons is we're home to an amazing Air Force base here. And we do have a lot of kids that come to us from outside of Enid Public Schools. And that presents some unique challenges. We can work on all the vertical alignment here in-house, but at the end of the day, we're going to have kids come to us who weren't a part of Enid Public Schools just recently. So that was a unique challenge for us. And another piece that we have to be mindful of with our kiddos is, we have two populations of language learners on our campus, and one is going to be our Spanish speakers. And the supports, it was very important to kind of be mindful of what kind of supports that Khan Academy could provide to those kiddos. And we'll get to that a little bit later, but we've been very, very impressed. But another unique opportunity for us is over 10% of our student population are Marshallese. And so from the Marshall Islands or Pacific Islander kiddos. And so their language that is spoken at home, that Marshallese language, is not something that's been traditionally written like you might see in Spanish and things like that. And there's certainly not the supports out there for our Marshallese students on that language at the same capacity that you would see for kids who were raised in maybe a Spanish-speaking home.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tyler, for all of that background information. And having such a diverse student population is definitely one of the challenges when you are working to adopt a blended learning platform like Khan Academy, incorporate AI and new technology for sure. Thank you for providing that background. I want to move to our classroom teachers. So we've heard from our administrators kind of where they started, where they were coming from, and the challenges that they were looking to overcome. And as Dr. Crowley mentioned, they wanted to be very intentional with rolling this out with the teachers. And so this next question is for Robin, Chase, and Stephanie. If you guys would talk a little bit about some concrete ways that AI, khanmigo specifically, is being leveraged in conjunction with your regular platform and regular instruction at Enid in order to improve student learning in math.
Well, we kind of started with the idea that we need to incorporate khanmigo into our classrooms approximately 30 minutes a week to give the students an advantage, some time to get to know how to use it, some learning time and everything. I know that in my classroom, I give them 10 minutes at the beginning of each class hour because we have 6 hours of class that I teach. And that gives them 40 to 50 minutes a week, depending on what else we're doing. So quizzes and tests, obviously not. I instruct them they have to use khanmigo in that time period so that they can get used to using the AI chat. They're very used to immediate answers. They can go to different websites and get their answers immediately. But with khanmigo, the great thing is he doesn't give them the answer. He converses with them, he talks with them. And so I instruct my students that they need to go and speak with khanmigo before they can come and ask for help from me. But it's also a great way for if they need to later on, if I'm not around, if they need to ask for help, now they know how to do it because they're doing it in class 30 minutes a week or more. I also use at the beginning of the semester or the beginning of the year, school year, we use the Getting Ready for Algebra 1 and also Getting Ready for Geometry and some of the other classes, quizzes, the course challenges, so that we could see where our students were. And then I like to use the Recommend Assignments AI tool to recommend assignments for my different students to help fill in gaps or to give them a little bit of enrichment if they are ahead of the rest of the class. So those are just a couple of the ways that I use it in my classroom.
Great. Thank you, Robin. Chase, what about you?
Excuse me. For me, I get to teach intermediate algebra for the most part. And khanmigo itself, like she mentioned, you kind of got to get your students used to using the AI tool because it doesn't just ship them out the answer. So you got to kind of teach them and show them how to walk through step by step and how it teaches you step by step how to solve the problem, which is great. Intermediate algebra, along with that, I use this every single day for my homework and everything like that because we don't really have a book and standards and things like that. We just have we have stuff we have to meet, but because it's intermediate algebra, not algebra 1 or something like that, I don't have to follow the book directly. So Khan Academy allows me to also go in and pull from if I'm teaching closer to algebra 1 today, then I'll go pull from algebra 1. If I'm teaching closer to geometry or algebra 2, I'll go into those courses and pull what I need to out of there. So it gives me a lot of flexibility as a teacher, which is awesome. And then the students with the AI tool as well, if we need to do tutoring, I'm busy on the backside of things. I get to coach college baseball, which is lots of fun. So I don't have the same office hours as a lot of our other math teachers. And so my students can hop in there at home and they know how to use the tutoring tool. And sometimes we have specific days set up for that. That way they're refreshed on that and they can go in there and use that to help better their grade and understand things better and just keep moving forward.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Stephanie, on to you.
Okay, so I teach honors geometry, and I also start off my class with the first 10 minutes. They can work on it like a bell ringer type thing. But with my kiddos, I have gone back to the Algebra 1 platform, and what I do first of all, I started off assigning them lessons and all this kind of stuff. They were getting confused what I wanted them to actually focus on. So I started just focusing on the quizzes and the chapter tests. And then that way, if they didn't score what they wanted to score on it, I told them to go back, watch the videos, do the practice problems, do things like that to understand it better. So it's kind of like, I want you to go and, this is going to sound tacky being a teacher, but kind of self-teach yourself these concepts instead of having me sit there and telling you word for word. They're going back and learning it on their own, which honestly, I think is making more of an impact on them than if I stood up in front of them for 30 minutes saying, okay, now you do this step, now you do this step, now you do this step. With them going in there and using that to teach themselves, it's making more sense to them. And then I give them a grade. They have to meet their 30 minutes and they have to do either a quiz or a test, whatever I've assigned to them for that week.
Great, thank you. So what I heard from you guys, concrete ways that you're utilizing it, it's really promoting student agency. It's helping them in their productive struggle. It's giving them an opportunity to get information and get support when maybe you aren't available because of the timing or whatever happens to be happening in the classroom. So it's really being used as a tool to help support the student learning and the student progress. And then grouping that together with the platform, your students are really focused in on skills. And so that's a really great way to utilize the AI in conjunction with our platform as well. The next question is also for the three of you. So these concrete ways that you guys have just described obviously are going to have some sort of impact to students, and you alluded a little bit to that. But I would love for you to speak a little bit more on what noticed changes that you have seen or even experienced in your students since pairing AI support with the math practice that's inside of Khan Academy. And Stephanie, why don't we start with you first and we'll go backwards the other direction.
Okay, what have I noticed? Well, basically kind of what I just said. There's more of a confidence. With me having them go back and working on Algebra 1 skills, they're building those Algebra 1 skills and filling in holes. So when we get to the material that I'm teaching in honors geometry, they can go, oh yeah, I remember how to do that because we just did that in Khan Academy. Yeah, right. So now let's take it a step further. And they're seeing how what they already know. I mean, math is so linear. So they're seeing how what they already know keeps building. And so it's not necessarily, I learned it, now it's time to move on and forget that. It's, I've learned it, hold on, I need to keep it because I'm going to use it again later.
Great, thank you. Chase, what about you? What have you observed from your students? Any changes since pairing AI with the math practice in Khan Academy?
I think for the most part on my end, it's more of like a obviously confidence, but maybe discipline would be the right word. Like my kids are more likely to do their work. And I think that comes from them not having to come ask me how to do something. They can get it. They can ask khanmigo, things like that. Khan Academy is also set up with a nice little green check mark and a ding when you get the right answer, which is always fun. And I think that drives them to go ahead and do the next problem instead of paperwork where you don't really know if you did it right or not, and you turn in an assignment and you get it back and you didn't do any of them right. So I think the instant feedback portion of that really helps them to go ahead and do just the next question. And then with Khan Academy, there's 4 to 7 questions or so, and so they like to try and make sure they get all 4 or all 7, and it really drives them to do that extra work.
Great, thank you. And Robin, what about changes you've seen in your students?
Well, for one thing, I've seen higher grades. I mean, that's their understanding so they're able to do the work. As for what Stephanie said with being able to go back and say, oh, I've seen this. I know how to do it because I've already done it on Khan Academy. I've had that happen a lot in my classes this year because some of my students that may be ahead in some areas, they see it a week or 2 or 3 weeks before we even do it, and they know. Another thing is, and they think that it frustrates me, but it makes me so happy, is they'll walk up to ask me a question, or they'll raise their hand, and before I can get to them, they go, oh, never mind, I figured it out. That's what I did just last week. And then as for the ding and the check mark, I think that's hilarious because my students, most of the time, they mute their sound in class. But occasionally you'll hear that little ding across the room. And so what I've done is I don't call out the student, but I'll just say, hey, great job, whoever that was. And now my other students are doing it. So they're also encouraging each other with this. And they'll go back, they'll ask khanmigo for help. They'll ask each other for help. They're actually going and looking at material before coming up. And, we kind of have a learned helplessness sometimes with our students. And instead of coming up and asking for every step, they're trying to figure it out before they do it. And to me, that is a big thing because they're learning more, because they're actually trying it without having that crutch of having a teacher tell them every step of the way. And also, I do have a story. I was talking to one of my coworkers in the hallway, and one of his former students came up and to speak with him. And she said, how we're using khanmigo in math class now? And he said, yeah. She said, when I started using it properly and started asking the tutor, I've never learned math faster in my life than I have with khanmigo. So I thought you guys would like to hear that story. I've kept that for the last few weeks. I thought it was a great story for khanmigo.
I love that. And I love that all three of you highlighted the confidence that students are having, not only in the math content, but also the use of technology. This generation it grew up with technology. They don't know a world any different. And so with the fast pace, things always flying at them, it's nice to hear that through some concrete ways, procedures and things that you guys are implementing in your class and the repetitive practice, that they're finding that confidence and they're living in that productive struggle, which is where learning happens. And that's a really important point. We're going to veer and kind of switch gears for a moment. We've talked to our teachers and heard about their classrooms. Tyler and Dr. Crowley, I would love to pick your brain for a moment. Implementation comes with a lot of bells and whistles and a lot of things to think through. And one of those things is professional learning. And so I would love to hear from you guys how professional learning, what role it has played in equipping your teachers to actually integrate khanmigo and AI tools effectively in their classrooms.
Yeah, so I'll get started with that, Jennifer. So whenever we were first presented this opportunity, we were very curious about the vision that Khan Academy had for this program and what it looks like on your end. And we were very happy to find out it was very close to our vision on how we were hoping to implement it ourselves. And one of the big pieces for us is we kept driving that point home, and you guys do as well, is that this program does not replace the classroom teacher, not by a long shot. And our goal was just to build those teachers up and build their practice up even more. The Khan Academy supports and professional development have been great. We were very mindful about not overwhelming our teachers initially, because there are so many great things that this platform can do for our kids. But because of there being so many of those things, it can be very easy to be overwhelmed, right? And so we took that approach, and that was very much the same approach that we were seeing from the Khan Academy team. And that was very, very important for us. So that was one of our biggest deals. When we first started working with this, we met with our geometry team last year and said, hey, we want you guys to roll this out and let's experiment with it. Let's kind of make it your own. We do not expect it to look the same from one class to the next. And let's all experiment with it. And we can come back together and huddle up and talk about, hey, what's working, or what isn't working, or what do we need to learn more about? And I think that was very beneficial for us.
Thank you. Dr. Crowley, you're on mute. All good.
Of course, yes. So just adding to what Mr. Elders was saying, once we figured out, exactly where we were going to start last year, and then adding to this year, Mr. Elders has definitely helped to be an instrumental piece to our team, because he, as the instructional coach, he is going in and he's helping to work with the teachers there at the campus level every day, to where, he's helping them see how the tools can be. So when we have our instructional, follow up and professional learning from Khan Academy, which I definitely agree, you all have been tremendous in terms of, being there to support us and showing us just the different tools and availability and how it can make it work for us. And then he follows up with the campus level of how it does look for us at EPS, and what does that look like in not even just EPS, but at EHS, in our algebra, in geometry, in physical science. And so what he's helped to do, and what we do to support that, is helping the teachers to see how the AI tools can help them to be more intentional in their planning and in their practices. So that way, like even Ms. Bully was saying, she uses the tool to help them to use the data to plan what kind of practices or the instructional assignments that she needs to give to her students. So that way, she's not just thinking, okay, well, I think this would be a good practice for those kiddos to work on. She's being very intentional about saying this group of kid needs exactly that type of assignment to work on. So that way they are working on the exact skills that they need to be moving up into their proficiency and mastery levels on. So that way they are getting those foundational gaps addressed, so that way they are being successful in algebra, to move on to geometry, to move on to show the successful math focus that they need to be able to demonstrate. And not just at a campus level, sometimes we do, at the administrative level, we talk about the data a lot, not just to show in the data, but to also just be successful in post-secondary, whatever that means for them. So that's really the goal, is that they can own these skills and take them to move forward in whatever they want to do and be, wherever that pathway leads them. So that's really what we have seen, is that the tools at even a more broader level is just help our teachers to be more intentional. And like even Ms. Garris and all of them at some point have kind of mentioned, it helps them to be an intent, they have their own tutor. Even Ms. Garris says, not to say that I want them to work on their own, but they do kind of are able to work on their own. And Mr. Bridges said, they're able to go and log in at night, when they're working at home. So, and that is the point of khanmigo, is they are supposed to be able to have their own individual tutor helping them exactly where they are in the ways that they need, addressing the skills that they need. And so that's the point for khanmigo, as for the individual tutor for the student, and then working for the teacher's aid for the teacher. That's kind of that's the approach that we like to take for it. So.
Love that. And so what I'm hearing is professional learning, number one, is ongoing for you guys. It's the partnership with Khan Academy, the professional learning that comes in, but then also kind of on campus, and in real time, focused in on, okay, what are all of the tools? What are all of the capabilities and the learner activities? And then what really fits with your kids and your campus and your needs? And I think that targeted approach is one of the reasons that you're seeing the successes that you are. And, when we talk about implementation, it comes from a place of identifying, we started this conversation identifying a potential problem or a potential challenge, and looking at moving forward, and then thinking through, you started with very intentional PLCs. You guys, as teachers, have seen some changes in your student behaviors. You've also attended professional learning and continue to have professional learning. And so the whole implementation process isn't static. It's very fluid, and it's based on what you have. And so Stephanie and Tyler, I would love for you guys to talk a little bit about just data analysis, and how does that help play into adjusting the instruction and closing skill gaps How are you using khanmigo and Khan Academy to help you do this particular thing?
Well, Jennifer, one of the big things for us, we have a lot of the traditional data pieces in place here at Enid Public Schools. We're very blessed. We have a lot of information about our kids and their learning, and we use that to make a lot of our decisions. But the best thing that I've noticed when it comes to data in using Khan Academy is that it's tracking student learning in real time, and that's so critical. In the traditional sense, we have common formative assessments and common summative assessments, and we sit down and we go through that learning and identify which kids have it, and which ones don't, and all that. But we know that the differentiation is more complex than that to meet the needs of every kid in the room. And this program allows us to really find the best fit for each individual learner in the room, whether that means that they're ready for an extension, they're ready for some work maybe outside of where they're at right now, or, hey, you're going to hear this all the time with math teachers. It's so hard to teach them geometry if they're struggling in algebra, or they're struggling in basic number sense skills that they might have, that hopefully they would have mastered at an earlier grade level. This allows us to catch it immediately and provide those timely tutorials for those kids to build those skills back up. And again, it goes back to building confidence with those kids.
Great, thank you. Stephanie?
Okay, so on the concept of data analysis, I can only speak for what I see in my class, because I don't have access, and I don't want access to all the other teachers. I can speak to what happens in my room. And like Tyler said, it is really nice because it's each individual student based off of them, what they know and what they're learning. So my data analysis is based off of what I see for each kiddo. Now, one thing I did notice was I had kids that were getting their time in, but I wasn't seeing a lot of work being done. So I got in there and I started looking at their profile and everything. These kids were using it to help them with physics and chemistry. And I didn't get onto them because they were using it to help them understand these other classes as well. So I saw that through analyzing my data for my kids. But as far as everybody in the math department or in those content areas, it's just pretty much what each individual teacher tells me that they're seeing.
I love that. And Stephanie, I'm gonna put you on a spot and ask you a follow-up question. So when we had our professional learning session all the way back in August, you guys had made a plan, or actually I think it was September. It was right before Labor Day. You guys had made a plan and you were rocking and rolling forward. And as we dug into the data, we uncovered something. Would you mind talking a little bit about just that aha moment and the adjustment that you made kind of moving forward? You mentioned earlier talking about the get ready for algebra and the get ready for geometry courses. But I would love for you to share with the participants today, just what was that aha moment, if you can remember what our conversation was, and then how that kind of moved you guys forward.
Okay, first of all, you need to understand that sometimes when I have a thought, my mouth and my brain don't work well together and it just comes out. We were meeting with you all and we were talking about how we were going to use it and all this kind of stuff. And honestly, there's a lot of stuff there, and I know I haven't used your program to the point that I should. There's a lot there for me to still use. But we were in this meeting and one of the other presenters, she said, "So why aren't you guys using the getting ready for geometry?" And I just kind of looked at her and I went, "What?" And then you all explained what the getting ready for geometry was, because it's not right there in front of my face. I had to scroll down to find it. And so after discussing with you all, I kind of volunteered my team to not focus so much on the geometry material, but to do the getting ready for geometry, give them that pre-test, and use that to kind of guide what our kiddos would be working on outside of our teaching. Not what we're going to teach, but so they can work on individual stuff to help them, again, feel more confident. So yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Stephanie, for sharing that story, and I apologize for putting you on the spot. It was a moment when I look back and I think about our time together. It was a moment of light bulb, right? It's a light bulb moment of recognizing that Khan Academy has access to a lot of coursework and a lot of skills. And just because you are teaching geometry doesn't necessarily mean that is the sole course that your kids might need, or that there's not additional supports somewhere else in another course. And I also wanted to highlight the willingness to be fluid in your plan. Sometimes when you get in and get going and you've got your plan going on, it's sometimes hard to take a pivot or to turn right. And I just would love to commend you guys early on for recognizing and making some slight little adjustments to your instructional practice and your implementation plan. And I think that is also, a piece of evidence to the success that you guys are having with Khan Academy and with khanmigo. And as we kind of draw our time to a close, Dr. Crowley, I would love to go back to you with a final question. What advice would you give to any administrators looking to replicate the success that you have seen in Enid Public Schools in their own districts?
I would just say a couple of things, I guess 3 things really more specifically kind of come to mind. One, develop a team. I think one of the biggest successes that I can attribute here in Enid is the people that you see before you and the people that you heard speak. We really do approach this as a team approach. I could have very easily, when this got when we were fortunate enough to take a part of this, I could have easily went to the high school and said, okay, we're doing this. This is what we're going to do, X, Y, Z, now go forth and do, and then backed away. But to truly have made it be successful, I needed to have to be there. I needed to be part of the team. I needed to also have their advice and their inputs. And so because they have different perspectives than my perspective here at the district level, I needed campus perspectives. And so needed teacher perspectives, coaches perspectives, campus administrative perspectives. So it really does need to be a team approach. We do everything together as a team. We do, professional learning together as a team. We do this as a team. I mean, it really does take a team. So build a good team and work together as a team. The other thing that I would say is take some time, as we've shared from each of us, I think in different ways, and let the teachers get in, let them see, let them experience, let them feel what khanmigo is, so that way they can start understanding how that is going to look within their classrooms and within, how it's going to work for their students. As you heard, when we started, we let each teacher kind of make the decision how that was going to look for their students in their classrooms, but we all worked under the guidelines of the expectation of 30 minutes a week. Now, how that 30 minutes looked was going to be based off of how each teacher felt and needed, but at least we all moved forward under the same premise, but we all moved forward because we all had a familiarity going into it. And then the last thing I would say is just really keep that open mindset. And, as you heard Ms. Garris say, we're still learning. I mean, even now, we just met the other day with Ms. Francis and went over data on how we could even still now be better and how we can still be more intentional. So just be open to just continue to grow and just continue to learn and just be open and keep growing and learning and really, because the more that you grow and learn about the program, because for one, you all are growing and learning, you know, it seems like more tools are popping up and you all are really so wonderful about listening to us too and taking our feedback and changing ways and adding more into how khanmigo can be receptive to not only the students but for the teachers as well. So the more you change, the more we grow as well. And it is only makes for more successful ways to support the students. So thank you all for that. And please feel team, jump in. Anything you want to add to that, clarify. Like I said, I'm not the sole voice. It truly is a team approach.
Thank you, Dr. Crowley, for that wonderful kind of overview of really all of the lessons that you guys have learned together. And the biggest takeaway for me is the team aspect, making sure that all of the stakeholders have a voice and that there is constant review and constant conversation and learning and growing together. And I think the confidence that your entire team has in the platform, utilizing khanmigo as an AI tool is what is being transferred to your students. And I think as the students are using it and they're seeing their teachers use the tool and be very intentional with what's going on, I think that that's a big piece as well. So thank you for sharing. And folks, Enid, you heard today, is strategically implementing Khan Academy, the platform, as well as khanmigo. In the chat, Aviv has dropped a link. If you are interested in learning more about partnering with our team, please take a moment to click on that link and submit your information, and someone will get with you in the next few days. I would also love to say that all registrants will be receiving a recording of today's session in a follow-up email. So please be looking for that in the next few days. Thank you to each and every one of our panelists for sharing your time and experiences with Khan Academy and khanmigo, and most importantly, the impact on student learning successes. Thank you to all of our participants for attending this afternoon. We hope to connect with you again very soon. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.